I'm going to say it. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Until Dawn is a good movie. But let's talk about that. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. So glad you made it. So glad to see you here. Again, we are talking Until Dawn. Until the Dawn. Now I know this may be controversial and I'm going to talk about it. Obviously, that's what this whole video is about. Until Dawn is in fact a good movie. The reason why I'm sitting here talking to you right now is because although Until Dawn is a good movie, it should not have been Until Dawn. Let me get into that. Okay, so like I said, the movie by itself isn't bad by any means. But when it comes to this connection to the video game Until Dawn, released in 2015 with a remake in 2024, I know my stuff. That's where things start to get iffy. The movie is a time loop movie, and it's a time loop movie made from a game where you can't retry or respawn. And one of the most striking examples from this disconnect is the portrayal of Dr. Hill. Yes, Dr. Hill is in the movie. Dr. Hill is still played by Peter Stormare. I think that's how you say it. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, in the game, Dr. Hill is Josh's psychiatrist, as we find out. We think he's the player's, but it's actually Josh. He's a real practicing professional, concerned about Josh's deteriorating mental state. And as the story unfolds, he starts to realize what Josh is doing to his friends. And he becomes increasingly disturbed by it. His role is meant to ground the player, kind of make you question the morality of Josh's actions and offering a psychological lens into the story that's portrayed by having you in the first person of Josh in Dr. Hill's office for a majority of the time up until close to the end, where we then find out it is Josh. However, in the movie, Dr. Hill is reimagined as the one running the game itself. He's no longer a concerned psychiatrist. He's this sinister mastermind, creating Wendigos, putting these people through experiments. That change completely alters his character. It turns him from a voice of reason into a villain, which not only cheapens his original purpose, but also distorts the dynamic that was between him and Josh. And speaking of Josh, the film suggests that he was one of Dr. Hill's former patients by showing his file. Which then means this movie is in fact part of the same universe. And it almost implies that Dr. Hill saw what Josh was doing and agreed with it, maybe even encouraged it. Or you could see it as the film presenting it to make it seem like Dr. Hill has been orchestrating this deadly game all along for years, which it is how it's portrayed, but even possibly doing the same to Josh, which then completely throws everything out of whack. We know this was by no means the case. This time loop is giving off Groundhog's Day, or especially Happy Death Day vibes, as the game resets and loops somehow with this, clock with the skulls, which, as we know, isn't how the original Until Dawn worked. Until Dawn is this game where your actions have consequences and you can't retry, you can't respawn. Your actions are set in stone unless you restart the PlayStation or do all this other stuff. And it's all centered around the butterfly effect, as this one choice will lead to this happening, which will lead to this happening, and just branch you on a completely new path. And, going back to the movie here, aside from Dr. Hill's office and himself, appearing at the end. We have the Wendigos in the movie, and we have the psycho mask that Josh wears. But those are the only real connections to the game. And even these connections feel superficial. The mask, for instance, which was what Josh used in the game to prank his friends, and a crazy prank at that. But in the movie, it's just worn by some random brutal killer with no deeper meaning. We don't know who this man is. And at the end, and I know I've kind of shit on this movie just now with the entire Until Dawn connections, but that's the thing. As a standalone film, Until Dawn as a movie is great. Standalone film, erase everything you know from the game, throw it out of your mind, just go into this like it's a brand new blockbuster film, and it's an entertaining film. Me and my friend had a great time. It's entertaining, it's got some great comedy, it's got a fun story. Despite being pretty similar to Happy Death Day, it mixes it up with the days and how each character dies. It gives it a refreshing feel, and just like Happy Death Day, they have a limit to how many times they can die. It's got some solid jump scares, especially there at the end. And honestly, it may be one of my favorite jump scares I've ever experienced in this movie. And on top of that, great casting. Like I said, you got Peter Stormare back as Dr. Hill. You have Odessa Zion. And character-wise, too, the cast is great. They had great chemistry. They had some really genuine moments. And personally, Abe and Clover were the stars of the show, and it was a genuinely satisfying watch. And as you can tell, my problem is that the movie could have been an original, because it already is. There's not enough to connect it to the video game that would drastically change the movie if it wasn't titled Until Dawn. Make it Before Dusk, and it's fine. Until Dawn is a notable franchise where they could capitalize off a name and make easy money. And even if you didn't do that, I genuinely think you could have just made some good, genuine money, easy money, because it's a good film. I had fun. I enjoyed watching it. I would love to watch it again. And despite it being a genuinely good film, and it does respect the source material. I will say that as much as Dr. Hill is different, it does respect the source material. But I still feel it does a disservice to just so many fans who wanted a movie based on their favorite game. So while the movie might entertain as a standalone experience, its relationship to Until Dawn feels more like a loose adaptation than like a true spiritual successor that they tried to make it out to be. Like I said, they based it in the same universe. It's probably going to have a sequel with how it ended. At least they left the door open to a sequel, but it doesn't have to be Until Dawn. It didn't have to be Until Dawn, but now we're here and it is. I've already scoured through Letterboxd. You have people who played the game who are expecting Until Dawn, the video game, the movie. It's not like that. Unfortunately, there are people who just can't get past that. Me, myself, I don't really have that big of a connection to Until Dawn. I love the game. I think it's fun. I'm not like the biggest fan ever, but I was able to go in open-minded, just sit down. I kind of expected it to be bad, but I sat down, just enjoyed myself, and it actually turned out to be a good movie. There's people who unfortunately can't look past that, and they're going to go into this movie just watching it and see that it's not Until Dawn, and they're just going to shit on it. So overall, in my opinion, 3.5 stars. You know, I'm gonna give it like a 7.4 out of 10. You know, it stands well on its own, it really does. But I just wish it wasn't titled Until Dawn, because it is good. It's a genuinely good movie, and I can't stress that enough. If you haven't watched it, please go watch it. Have fun. It's a good horror film, but man, it is a standalone film. Do not expect it to be Until Dawn. And with all that being said, thank you so much for sticking around to the end and being here. Please leave the video a like if you enjoyed it, because it really does help out the channel so much. And if you made it this far and you have not subscribed, why not? You're already here. Thank you all so much for being here, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.